At this point, I'm about as late as one can be with my QK75 video, and I'm even wondering what I could bring to the table that hasn't been said already. Chances are that you too have consumed a fair amount of digestible content on this matter, which begs the question, why stick around for this one? Well, if you would allow me to indulge in my ramblings, which will probably go a little past its welcome as usual, I would like to take the opportunity to talk a little less about the mechanics of this mechanical keyboard and a little more about its position in the current landscape, or at least how I perceive it. You see, I repeatedly kept uttering the phrase "the market is changing" in some of my previous videos, and I think the QK75 lends itself perfectly as a vantage point to take a closer look at that statement. But that's not all. I think the QK75 is also in a very unique position for its kind, one that faces a more crowded competition than its peers, namely pre-builds. But why is that?
Why is that? It's one of life's mysteries, sir.
Actually, no, Mav. I would argue that this was a deliberate move by QWERTY, one that tries to tap into a market that has historically belonged to a different crowd. You see, during my past 2 years of venturing through this hobby, I've always felt that there was a gap between pre-built lovers and custom enthusiasts, a wide one too, which shall not be crossed.
You shall not pass!
Pre-built users often steered clear of customs, too complicated to deal with, whilst also asking for an amount of money that could rarely be justified. One might even say that customs were simply too hot to handle. Custom board enthusiasts, on the other hand, well, they were rarely impressed by pre-builds. Considered by them as these simpletons of peripherals, they wondered why anyone would scoop down to such levels in order to satisfy one's typing needs. Pre-builds simply left them cold.
That's too cold.
And that's where the QK75 comes into play, attempting to land somewhere in the middle, offering everything you need out of the box with conveniences usually reserved for pre-builds such as a wireless connectivity, including a 2.4 GHz mode, whilst also giving you all of what customs are known for: feel, sound, build quality, and plenty of options to modify to one's content. You could say that it's the best of both worlds, a keyboard that feels
just right.
We're nothing more than friends. You're not my lover, more like a brother. I know you since we were like 10. Yeah, don't mess it up, talking that shit. Only gonna push me away, that's it. When you say you love me, that made me crazy. Here we go again. Don't go look at me with that look in your eye. You really ain't going nowhere without a fight. You can't be reasoned with them, don't be impolite. I've told you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 times. Haven't I made it obvious?
Before we continue our little fairy tale, just in case you've never heard about the QK75, let's do a quick rundown of what we've got here. This is, as just mentioned, the QK75 by QWERTY, a sister company to famed OLabs, which released their first keyboard, the QK65, around mid of 2022, followed by the QK60. What makes these boards so special is not their quality, options, or even sound, it's the price. It's what you get for the amount of greenery you put down. There was a question on my Q&A post last year asking me what my keyboard for 2022 was, to which I replied, the QK65. Not because it was by any means the best keyboard that came out, far from it, but because it heralded a new age, the age of budget. By no means was QWERTY the first company to do this, and neither are they the only ones continuing it, but no other board made it as popular as the QK65. Arguably, they did offer a combination that outclassed the competition, at the time at least, and a feature set that made it very compelling, but more about that later. With each iteration, QK also improved upon its initial spawn, tweaking the machining, build, and sound, whilst also adding more features and options, which brings us to the QK75, its current and third champion in the race. You will immediately notice improvements if you've owned any of the other two. The machining, for example, is much more accurate, it's sharper and finer in detail. The construction offers two completely different mounting systems to choose from, one of which is plateless. It's when you, as the name suggests, don't use a plate at all, making this board much more flexible than you would expect, figuratively and literally. but it also kept some of the good stuff from its siblings. The wireless connectivity is back, which is a fantastic addition and rarely seen on boards with these specifications. A vast amount of color options is available too, including this sparkly one, although you can't really see it during normal conditions. You really gotta look for it.
You're beautiful.
With this being a 75% board, we also get the inclusion of the function roll as well as a knob, although I found it a bit too shallow for my taste, which made it difficult to quickly grab onto. Digging in made it inconvenient to spin, and approaching it from the outside sometimes failed to register at all, due to its polished nature coupled with my dry fingers. There are also more playful design elements this time around. The embossed branding on the back is in cursive and finished with a little heart. Not quite my taste, but cute nonetheless. The internal brass battery cover offers some giggles too, pretending to be a browser tab. Again, not quite my taste, but the designers clearly had a lot of fun on this project, which is a great thing to see. The assembly was as straightforward as you would expect. If you've put any other keyboard together before this, you'll find yourself right at home, and even if you didn't, QK offers some of the most comprehensive guides I've seen. Really, there's a lot of documentation on each of their products, helping you troubleshoot and get everything up and running. I can only applaud the amount of effort put into this. It's a very kind gesture towards their users. The only part of the assembly that might tickle some head scratches is when you add the rotary encoder, which you can't leave out if you don't like it, replacing it with a little coin holder. Once assembled, it's a joy to use, but it's nothing extraordinarily amazing. For example, comfort-wise, it's just fine. The front height is about average, and if you are in need of a wrist rest, may I suggest the one from NuFi? It has almost the perfect width for the QK75, and it matches it nicely, especially the white one, or at least to my lavender build here. The included keycaps, if you've picked them up, are really good too. These are dye sublimated and feel great. The legends are crisp, although not as clean as on double shot caps, but nothing I would notice during daily use. Besides, it's a trade I will gladly take in order to get this perfect match. Considering the asking price, it's a fantastic deal, one that I think you should take regardless of whether or not you end up using it. The same goes for the new Ashen switches, which are made by Kale. Really good out of the box too, and a good match for the 75, although as other videos have shown, you can get noticeably different sounds out of this board if you start tweaking and experimenting. If you got the whole package though, as I did, here's what you can expect in terms of sound. Please bear with me as I'm trying to get my point across on the current state of mechanical keyboards and where the QK75 fits into, and what I think QWERTY keys and other manufacturers are trying to accomplish. Let's begin by taking a step back in order to look at the keyboard world in its entirety, including pre-builds, gaming, and of course custom boards. Short disclaimer, I don't know everything, far from it actually, so if I missed an entire category, which is very likely, please let me know, and apologies, I didn't mean to ignore it, I simply didn't know any better. On the left we got our proprietary pre-builds, the ones that are about as private as they can get. I'm talking about the Logitechs, Microsofts and Apples, you know, the keyboards that aren't meant to be opened, tinkered with or modified, the ones that are to be used exactly as the almighty manufacturer intended to. On the opposite to that, we've got the extremes of customs, boards that are entirely made by their creators, from custom PCBs to custom housing, screens, and even software, essentially whatever the imagination and ingenuity of a builder can think of. For example, look at this weird micro keyboard I had the chance to check out at a meetup last year. It's just wonderful. Although I later found out that this is actually a kit you can buy, but you get the point. This is also where I would place the split ortholinear keyboard community. I'm not sure they are at the edge of custom, but to me, they really seem to be. This brings me to the one slightly to the left. That's where the custom keyboards live, where you have to do a little more compared to your average group buy. It's where you get a prefab PCB and then find a case that fits or have one commissioned. It's sort of also where I would put something like a Norbauer. The reason being that I think that this still takes a little more effort and is a little more unique than what I would call a normal custom keyboard. On the pre-build side, we can also move one closer to the center. This is where we'll find boards that start to embrace some custom elements, like standard switches or even hot swap sockets. This is also where I would place most gaming keyboards, but as always there are exceptions, like the Wooting 60HE, a gaming keyboard that goes far beyond the capabilities of its peers. Moving one further is where it starts to get a little interesting. This is where I would place something like an iQnix OG80, NuFi Halo series, or Mojo 68s among many others. At the core, these are still pre-builds, but they start to cross the line over to custom boards, to some degree at least, featuring gasket mounts, foam, silicon, and sometimes even standard screw-in stabilizers. Over on the custom side, we now enter the most known area, the boards that you and I probably own and use, acquired through a group buy and shipped with their matching PCB. All you really need to do is find keycaps, switches, and stabs. And then we begin to enter what I would call the Goldilocks zone, which doesn't rate quality, sound, or design individually, but the combination of it, coupled with the best features from both sides. For example, what makes pre-builds so appealing is the fact that you don't have to deal with complications like finding keycaps, switches, or PCB. You get a finished, working product out of the box, and almost always it is also something that can be bought straight away. The feature set is clear and contains everything the average user might need. No tweaking, no fiddling, and like a reasonably priced family sedan, it's not the most exciting, nor does it sound the best, but it does the basics well enough. Of course, choosing keycaps, switches, and sometimes PCBs is something that some, including me, really enjoy. Being able to create a unique combination in itself is a very fun part of the hobby. In fact, it might be the most fun part. Think of it like tweaking or customizing a sports car. You end up with something tailored to your taste, something that's unique and allows you to continuously enhance and develop your experience. But it also makes life more difficult. Finding all the parts and figuring out what you might like or not is very time consuming, and if you happen to have a family, well, sports cars don't really fit a whole bunch of kids, so you end up trading some features for customizability. But what if you could have both? Well, I believe that the boards in the Goldilocks zone try to achieve just that, but each of them does it slightly different. Keychron, for example, has an established pre-built base, but set out to create a new foundation to tap into the custom market and get some of those specialized features. The results? The Q, V, and K lines, offering pre-builds with custom sensibilities such as the popular gasket mounting system and VIA support, whilst keeping features such as wireless connectivity, at least on some of their products. Contrasting to this is Mode Designs, a custom keyboard brand that still sticks to its premium roots but sells its products in the most accessible way possible. More so than any other custom brand out there, at least that I know of. From the arguably best configurator to the recently introduced keycaps and switches, you can even get a whole theme including a matching wallpaper. Monaca is very similar to Mode Designs when it comes to the roots, however they are taking a different approach in order to get to the center. Instead of making their usual line more accessible like Mode, they created a new foundation based on their experience with premium keyboards. So unlike Keychron, who is, let's say, a brand best known for family sedans that have now made a sports car, Monaca is a sports car brand that now has made a family sedan, the Monaca Standard. And then we have QWERTY keys and their QK line of boards, including but especially the QK75, the first model that can be purchased with matching keycaps, switches, and everything else you need. It has all the features one could ask for, even things that are normally reserved for pre-builds like the tri-mode wireless connectivity and even its own software, which is kind of a negative pre-build feature, but you only get that if you take the wireless version. But what makes this combination so special? What sets this apart from all the other keyboards and brands that I just mentioned? Well, being the sister company to Olap's, which if we stick to the car analogies is, let's say, Lamborghini, has always made high-performance cars, but has now also made a family car. But unlike Monaca, which created a very efficient and streamlined family car, one that very gently introduces people into the hobby, QWERTY Keys has essentially taken an overpowered sports car and are simply calling it a family car. Actually, they aren't even doing that, they're just selling a car that somehow fits your whole offspring but also goes 4,000 miles per hour while sounding like a 67 Camaro. On top of that, they are being incredibly coy about the fact that it costs about the same as your neighbor's dilapidating Prius, but all of that together creates a first-time combination of features that hasn't been seen before, at least to my knowledge. They created the most reasonably priced performance family car in the world. The QK75 is the world's best pre-build. Hey, thank you so much for watching and a belated Happy New Year to all of you. Despite the impression that you may have just gotten from me, I'm not a car person. Actually, for those of you who are, you probably noticed. In retrospect, I wonder if that analogy actually made any sense at all. And I know that QK75 is of course not really a pre-build, considering what you get in the box is not actually, well, pre-built. But the point I was trying to make is that this board is by far the most complete keyboard in the custom space yet. In general though, what do you think about the overview of the market at the moment? Do you think I'm completely off, close, living in La La Land? Whatever the case may be, I hope it was at least entertaining. If not, Let me know so I can course correct for future videos. Thanks again to QWERTYKEYS for letting me try out the QK75 and to you for having an interest. All the important links are down in the description below, including some much more detailed and interesting videos about the keyboard itself from autofolks here on YouTube. Anyway, thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!